dental is always the biggest increase I notice for someone who hasn't had any coverage for years. It's needed, and I'm saying there is a cost to it. There is a reason that there's a cost for that too. I'm on this side, right on the fence with dentists as well. I have a lot of clients that are dentists as well, and I know why the costs are there. So when it comes down to the family of 5, a traditional group plan is really nice for them to go in, talk to the lady or the person at the front and make sure that this is going to be covered, and they do all that at the dental clinics as well.
I would start with, tell me a little bit about your life, a little story about Ellie.
Okay, yeah. So my background a little bit, as you know too, is that I started out with the dental field quite early on.
Yeah.
And it was quite fun because the dentist that I worked with at the time basically took me under his wing, right? And we just kind of flowed with it, but then he retired.
Yeah.
And I stayed on with the next dentist, and then that kind of grew as to keep me in the dental world. And I was in the dental world for over 20 some years.
Really?
So yeah, and then I was in BNI with the dental seat.
Oh.
And so I ended up meeting my colleague Judy through BNI.
Right.
So, and it was quite interesting because she asked me if I liked what I was doing, and you know what? We're always in for a change, and I always like to. I'm adventurous that way as well, because I'm willing to take a risk on some things. On other things, not so much. I'm very cautious. So she asked me about joining her team. And I said, well, let's just see what that looks like. And at the time, it was just her.
Yeah.
So, and she does all the investment stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm not into investments, but let's see what we can do at the insurance end. So getting into the insurance, well, group benefits was one of the key things that I thought I wanted to do. And I love it because with my dental experience in the background, that's always the most complex thing is the dental component. Because people are like, I don't know what major is. I don't know what ortho is. I don't know what basic is. I don't know, what is units and all this stuff. Well, to me, I can read it and tell you what it's all about. And that was the most complex case. So anybody who has a plan, they know, oh, I have $300 for a massage. Pretty simple. They know how that works.
Right.
The dental is always the most convoluted part.
Yeah, they don't really know.
Yeah, so I was quite comfortable with that. So I went through the process and training and getting all the LLQP, which makes it that I can be licensed to sell benefits as well, because you have to be licensed.
And did you do that through the dental side as well?
No.
Like, were you in charge of benefits at the dental side, though?
Absolutely, because I was training and I was a manager as well.
Gotcha.
So I had to definitely, any of the employees that we hired, I would make sure that they had all the tools that they needed. Because there is codes in the dental world.
Right.
So, forever, I still remember a lot of them, 011101 is polish, it's a prophy. So, yeah, I remember all of them. So that was, I trained them with all of that, right? And it's embedded in my head.
So that would have been a good stepping stone into understanding the insurance or group benefits complexities and da-da-da-da.
Absolutely, because so many people that when they come into an office, they're they don't understand it. So I would sit down with a lot of the patients that would come in, and I would explain what they have and how they could understand it.
Okay.
So it was quite easy for me, and I realized that when I decided to do this transition, that's the piece that was missing.
Okay.
When it come to even an advisor, yes, I do work with the company, the owner, the person that's in charge, but I do offer my services to help their employees too.
Okay.
To take it off the plan admin. So sometimes they're a plan admin for a business. That's not basically what they were hired for.
Right.
They were hired to do something else for the business, whether that be the accounting part or anything like that. So I always like to take that bother off the plate. They can call me, and then I'll help them out.
Love
and
that.
Explain. Yeah, because if I can, certain things, yes, they have to phone the 1-800 number because I'm not a doctor and I don't know all the medical things, because sometimes they'll phone and say, well, this isn't covered.
Right.
Well, it might be, but they just might need a little more information.
Okay.
So sometimes just sharing that with their employees or the employer for them to understand it gives them peace of mind, going, okay, now I get it.
Right.
Because
and knowing they can just reach out
absolutely.
in general to you and kind of get some guidance. And
absolutely. And I'm always more than willing
Yeah, wow, that I know about.
Yeah, they can text me, you know, they all have my number. They can text me and say, you know, what's happening here? And then I look into it as deep as I can. Because of FOIP, I can't phone and say,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
this is what happened. Why
Yeah.
isn't it? But I can follow up on, was this sent in properly?
Right.
Was there something missing? I can do that. And some companies are like, you know what, we can't even tell you that it has been sent because of FOIP. So it's just
really?
different. But I always try.
Yep. Yep.
You know, I don't need to know what it is. I can just say, you know, they sent in a claim for $72, just wondering if that was being processed or if there's something that's missing. So I definitely try to go above and beyond for them.
That's awesome.
Well, it is because, and that's what's lacking.
Okay.
And I remember I was really worried about doing something like this because there is a lot of advisors, and I know a lot of great ones.
Yep.
And I was kind of told, and I won't say who said this to me, but they said, you know what, yeah, there is a lot of advisors,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot of good advisors.
Interesting.
So I kind of had to think about
and
that.
what does that mean? Like, or what did they
Well,
mean by the
basically,
comment? Like,
not salesmen. I'm not a salesperson.
Yeah.
So a lot of advisors, and I've met them,
Yep.
and sometimes they come from other cities, but they're very transactional.
Okay.
Come in, they sell you.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
then they leave.
Yep.
And then you're sitting there holding whatever product it is and going, okay, now what?
Right.
And they're stunned. It's like a deer in the headlights going, okay, well, now what do I do with this? Who do I contact?
So
And
little
then-
support, is that?
Yeah,
okay.
it's very little support. And then when they do contact this person,
Yep.
so they phone and they say, you know what, we have some questions. They'll say, well, here's the number, call. And it's cut off, done. So I have met numerous companies that I have said, and my first rule of thumb is when I go into a business or get introduced to a business, I always ask them if they have a great relationship with their advisor.
Okay.
So 80% of the time, they can't even tell me their advisor's name.
Really?
They've never met them.
Wow.
Or they've met them in the beginning, and then that is it.
Right.
And I've had companies that have been with the same insurance company, so the same advisors
Yeah.
attached to that,
Yeah.
for like 10 years and never met them.
Wow.
So I'm like,
Wow.
wow, okay. So if they like the insurance company, that's one thing. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you can stay with that person.
Yeah.
So I can work alongside if they want to stay with that company just to give them that support that's missing. So we don't change absolutely anything,
Yeah.
and we just work on the support because that usually is what's missing. It's just the support.
Yeah, I mean, customer service.
Exactly.
Customer
yeah.
service.
Right down to like filling out applications.
Yes.
You know, some people are like, oh, I don't know what to do, or
Yeah,
you know, what do I put in here? Do I put neck for long-term disability? Do I have to have long-term disability? You know, so I just go basically above and beyond as much as I can to make sure that that person is 100% confident
Yeah.
on what they're purchasing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, and with that too, is that being that I'm independent means I can work with any insurance company. So I'm not like, say, if I was solely with Sun Life.
Okay.
When you're solely with Sun Life, you can only sell Sun Life.
Right. Right.
You know, and that's their contract, right?
So you're more like a
broker.
Yeah, kind of like a mortgage
Yes.
broker that can
Yeah.
essentially shop
Absolutely.
different companies and find
Absolutely.
the best rates, best plans.
Yeah.
Not always about the rate, but best
Yeah.
best plan that suits that company's needs or
Absolutely.
individual's needs. Or
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. So, and it totally works out that way too, is being on the independent side. I've done all the legwork. Usually at the beginning of the year, I look at all the rates and how they're coming through. Because sometimes what can happen is some of the companies will come in and I always call it, they buy the business. So they come in very cheap, you know,
Yeah.
right? But then what happens is on renewal, like no insurance company is going to sell you a product for $1,000 and let you use $5,000,
Right.
and there's not going to be consequences
Right.
because nobody can stay in business for that,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes what they call it, and they used to soften it and say, you know what, think of it as a coupon for the first year.
Okay.
But then, okay, use that and then say, okay, but the next year you have to pay back that coupon plus the rate increase.
Right.
So sometimes people are like, okay, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
So I want to always be transparent when it comes to that.
Yep.
Because I have, like some companies that people are with, they'll say, well, my partner at another company, you know, they only pay this much.
Right.
But you can never compare apples to apples.
No.
Because
But I don't think people even understand like I mean, like you said about staying in business, an insurance company, whether it be for benefits, well, particularly for benefits, like they still need to stay at a certain operating ratio.
Yes.
And that ratio requires, depending on the size of your business, like obviously sometimes the bigger your business, the more that ratio can even itself out if one
Yes.
person's using more on the dental side versus somebody using, you know, chiro or massage or whatever. But in smaller businesses, that usage, if it's, you know, maximizing its 100% usage, like you said, like
It'll
the insurance
always
company
go-
doesn't
yeah.
want you technically to be using 100% of your benefits because they don't make any money to do that.
Right, and that's where the renewal comes in and understanding it.
Yeah.
So if I basically book a meeting on a renewal with a company, I definitely go in there and say, okay, this is how much you paid, and it's
Yeah.
all transparent.
Yeah.
This is how much you paid in premiums in the dental.
Yeah.
This is how much the claims were.
Right.
Now, if it's the opposite, if the claims are lower,
Yep.
they see a reduction in the premiums.
Yep.
So a lot of times people say, oh, I never see a reduction. Well, your usage was always a little bit higher,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then I also try to soften it for the owners too, to kind of basically give them the opportunity to soften their hearts a little bit, is that you never know what's happening behind someone's doors.
Oh, totally.
They could have a sick little one.
Yep.
They could have a sick partner.
Yep.
And you don't know, and you don't want to punish them
No.
or blacklist them and say, oh, well, that's the reason that our premiums are so high. That's not right.
No,
You don't know. So I always try to soften them a little bit,
Yeah.
but once they seem to understand it, then they're like, oh, you're right.
But do you feel like there's like workarounds to that too anyway? I mean, if I would say like if a small business was, I don't want to say suffering, but finding it challenging with a premium increase because of some extended usage, I mean, and again, this is just ignorant question, but
Yeah, it's okay.
could they not just adapt potentially what the employer contribution and employee contribution might be then, just to like try and soften that if there is lots of usage happening across the board? You know, maybe a company was at once, we're paying for it, and maybe one year they need to go like 60-40, or I don't know, do you see that happen?
I
or?
do. That is an option. It's always in a lot of the contracts is 50-50. So
Okay,
definitely a 50 employee, 50 employer
Okay.
as well, like a split on that. But I do have companies that do pay for the whole thing, and I
Yep.
have companies that say, you know what, we want to pay 70%.
Right.
Of the premiums,
Yep.
and then the employer.
awesome.
Yeah, so it does work out really nice. And I always have to remind people too, is that the owners, like, this is a tax write-off for
Yep.
your company
Yep.
as well. So if you're successful or wherever you're at in your your income and stuff like that, this does help.
But it's also I mean, it's a retention
Oh, for
and
sure.
hiring tool to offer,
Yes,
you know, some level of benefits.
for sure.
You know, when you really like add up what not what someone can use, but let's just say it that way, like what an employee or a person can use. I mean, that's really like part of their compensation package in a way.
Absolutely.
At least that's the way I look at it.
And they look at it that way too,
Yep.
because a person will leave one company or not even go to another company if there's no benefits.
Right.
And I have a lot of people that will call me, like the HR person will call me
Yep.
and say, you know what, we're looking at hiring this person, but they want to have a clear look at our benefits. Can you send me a full copy of the benefits, because I just don't have
Interesting.
time to get it or whatever.
Yep.
And absolutely.
Okay.
And then I always say, if they want to reach out and ask me questions on it, because obviously they're looking for something in particular
Yeah.
that they need to make sure that they have coverage for.
So actually, this kind of leads into an interesting question. Then, say you are hiring, I'll call it top talent, or not, maybe that's the wrong word, but still top talent, and benefits is really important to them. If you have a plan, can you still like personalize a plan for an individual too, or?
You can to some degree.
Okay.
You can, but it's in their class.
Okay.
So if you have a class of, say, owners, management, and then I'll have ones that say 1 to 2 years employees, 3 to 4, or assistants, as long as everybody in that class has this, then they have to have the same coverage. So you
Right.
can't have a manager here with this much coverage and another manager here with only this.
Gotcha.
So you can create classes, and I have a lot of trucking companies. Actually, is quite unique.
Oh.
So they want to have retention of keeping people driving
Yep.
their trucks, which we all need because that's what's bringing food here,
Yep.
right? So they'll do that 1-2 year and then 3-4 year. And then it's like now they get a little bit more, right?
Okay.
And then they'll also attach a healthcare spending account sometimes.
Right.
on
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a really nice thing because then the company themselves could, if they're close to meeting their margins, like,
Yep.
okay, this is where we're at,
Yep.
then I always say start here because then at least you know if they use all their benefits,
Yep.
this is all it's going to cost you.
Gotcha.
And then I have companies that'll say, you know what, we want maybe only 80% on our premiums
Yep.
or that we're covering or whatever. And then they'll have the healthcare spending account to
Okay.
tag on for the remainder of the 20% that isn't covered on their traditional plan.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Then.
it
so
piggybacks
attaching
nice.
that would be a simple way of being able to give an individual, like that's where you could reward someone with
Yes.
with extra, even if they're not in a particular class or
Absolutely.
or even if all your employees, if you're a small business, are all under one class.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can dissect it pretty good. There are certain limitations if you get a smaller business at the say there's only 3 people.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you're closer like that 5 and up,
Yep.
you're a lot more options open up for you
Right.
to do that because you definitely want to make sure that CRA doesn't slap your hands on that.
On a
On a healthcare
account?
spending
Okay.
account, yeah.
Is there like an average? I don't know if I'm asking that right, but is there like a
An average-
starting point? Is there a
No, they're pretty. It comes down to whatever the employer decides he wants to give to his
Okay.
employees.
So what do you mean by like the CRA then?
The CRE, again, you can't have only these 4 people be on the healthcare spending account and these 4 people not having it.
Oh, okay.
You have to still offer it as a whole.
Okay, can
As-
can it still be declined though, or does it just mean like everyone
Oh, they
still
could decline a healthcare spending account. They just don't use it.
right?
So as long as they're on it, and if they choose not to ever use it, then
Gotcha.
which I don't see that normally because
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you've bought in glasses lately.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a
I mean,
healthcare spending account.
I'm lucky I haven't, but yes, I imagine yes, I
Yeah.
imagine so. Well, even dental and things like that,
Absolutely.
because that can get also expensive for people, and you know
Yes.
that can be a quick premium increase from 1 year to the next on renewal,
Absolutely.
or medication.
Yes, yes.
So
And dental is always the biggest increase I notice for
Yep.
someone who hasn't had any coverage for years.
mm,
Especially if they have littles at home. So
Oh,
you have
yeah.
a family come in here, they've got 3 kids and the mom and the dad, the partners. So you have 5 people, haven't been to a dentist because it's needed.
Yeah.
And I'm saying there is a cost to it. There is a reason that
Yep.
there's a cost for that
Yep.
too. I'm on this side, right on the fence with dentists as well. I
Yeah.
have a lot of clients that are dentists
Yeah.
as well. And I know why the costs are there. So when it comes down to the family of 5, a traditional group plan is really nice for them to go in,
totally.
talk to the lady or the person at the front and make sure that this is going to be covered. And they do all that at the dental clinics as well.
That's pretty cool then.
Yeah. And I always say too, again, if my dental background is never be afraid to ask because sometimes people don't know what to ask.
Okay.
So, and the question is the ADA fee guide, the Alberta Dental Fee Guide.
Ah,
There is dentists here in town that use that.
Okay.
And that is what all group plans are based from when it comes to the dental fee guide.
gotcha.
So you can't, it's not law that they have to charge that,
Right, right.
but some charge more than that.
Yep.
Then that's where you get where, oh, I thought my dental
Would cover.
would cover 100, it says 100%. Yes, 100% of the dental fee guide, but if they charge more, then that part won't be covered.
Well, that's actually a really interesting question. And
Yeah.
so are you saying, like, again, I'm making the assumption you're looking for a dentist, but if you were looking for a dentist, would that be a question to ask that dentistry?
Yeah, if they
clinic?
follow the Alberta Dental Fee Guide, absolutely. Ask that all day long.
I've never heard that before, so
Yeah.
that's actually really educational.
Yes, and I use, because I will do a shout out, London Road Dental
Yeah,
is
yeah.
one of my favorites,
Yeah.
and they do follow the fee guide.
Okay.
So when I do recommend anyone, I already know, and I know there's other ones that
Sure.
do that too, but I just know that Dr. Nelson does follow that.
Yep.
Because we had lots of meetings as well, and
Yeah.
I always want to make sure that it is legit. So when I sell the plan and when they say, okay, we want 100% dental,
Sure.
I have that piece of information to go with when I'm talking to the owner about signing up the plan.
And I imagine even the ones that are, I'm not saying on every level, but I imagine the ones that are charging a bit more, it probably still also has to do with their location, their overhead costs.
Yeah.
Like they might have to charge,
Yeah.
you know, in order for it to run appropriately.
Yeah,
like they might not be
absolutely.
able
Yeah.
to follow the fee guide. It isn't so much that they're just trying to
No.
to
Yeah.
gouge. I know
Yeah.
that's the wrong word, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
No. Yeah, it's just that they're allowed to charge what
Yeah.
they want to.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate that too, right? Because they do own the clinic.
Sure.
They should be able to charge what they want. If I had a store and I was selling my bag of chips, I want to decide what I'm selling those
Yeah.
bag of chips for.
Yeah.
I know that's a little lower standard from
yeah,
the dental,
true.
but the same kind of concept,
yeah.
right? Is that I don't want someone to tell me that, no, your chips are only worth this much money, and that's it. It's like, no, I'll decide.
I even like the word what they need to charge, because I mean,
Yeah.
again, like they may need to charge more because of their setup, or they might have some added employees to make
Right.
customer service better, and that's a cost.
Absolutely.
That's what I mean. I'm saying it to
Yeah.
not paint the picture that a dentist is also just sitting there
No.
being like,
No,
all right,
no,
well,
no.
I'm going to charge this much because that's what I want to charge.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
there are needs that need to be
Yeah.
covered, and every business is unique in that way of how
Absolutely.
they're operating and
Yeah.
the kind of equipment they have, the kind of overhead they have, the location they have.
Location is a big thing
Yeah.
on that too, right?
Rent,
Yeah,
can,
absolutely.
rent can be a very,
Yeah.
very big component of all that,
Yes.
and same with just your startup expenses and
Mm-hmm.
equipment expenses. Like that stuff ain't cheap.
Yeah, it's not a very yeah.
but
it's a
but I
very
really
expensive-
like
yeah.
that it's a good question to ask,
Yes.
to say, hey, is this where you're
Yes.
at? Because that could play into how much utilization you can have. Am I saying that right?
Right, and yeah, absolutely. Just so
Or
that you're,
what is going to be out of pocket, I guess, for you?
yes, and that's the biggest thing, is just so that nobody wants to go into any place, whether it be a store or a dental clinic or anywhere else, and have surprise on the
Right,
cost.
right,
Nobody likes a surprise.
right.
So, and that kind of comes a little bit with me too, with anything that I do.
Yeah,
I don't like to ever surprise my clients when it comes to premiums
Yep.
or increases or anything like that. The decrease, that's always a surprise, but
Yeah,
it's a good
yeah,
one,
yeah,
right?
right.
It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
people are always
guess,
happy about it.
guess what? Your renewal is in. And they're like, oh, let me guess, is it going up? No, it's going down. And I get it, whoa, okay, this is great,
Yay.
yes. You know, and I still give them the time and explanation of why it went down, because if I miss that boat of explaining that, the next year it could go the other way. So
Right.
I always leave that up going,
right.
you know, things can go up and they can go down.
Sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you know what I like about you is you're very professional.
Oh, thank you.
But to relate to people, you're also a little badass. I would say. And I like that about you, because you drive a motorbike, right? What kind of?
I do. I was actually just riding in this heat.
Yeah.
We just did a little venture. We went out to Rolling Hills and, prairie riding.
Yeah.
Ooh, it was very, very
Hot.
hot. We were kind of questioning going, I don't know if that was the smartest thing to do, because the place that we were actually going to was closed. It was closed for the season. We didn't know that. It was kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
In Rolling Hills, and we're thinking, okay, is there anything here? And we're
Right.
like, hey, there's a golf course. And my poor husband was like, please be open, please be open. So we made it there. Great place,
Yeah.
by the way. They had a little restaurant there.
Yeah.
It was amazing. We all had some good food and
Fun.
yeah, down some water.
Yeah.
And then carried on. But yeah,
What do you ride?
I ride a Fat Boy, Harley Fat Boy. Yes, it's a custom.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a limited edition. I believe it's number 296.
Yeah.
Is
Oh.
on it. Yeah. And
So
it's-
see, don't let the suit fool you.
Yeah, no. No. Yeah, because I always say if my clients seen me on the road, like
Yeah.
I do look totally different.
Yeah.
And I have sometimes people say, well, do you like wear all the leathers and stuff? Do you like, yeah? And I'm like, yeah, I do, because I don't want my butt to be down,
Yeah.
sliding down the
Yeah.
highway and leaving my impression there.
Yeah.
I do.
Little protection
Yeah.
goes a long way.
Yeah, I leather up
Yeah.
and make sure that I'm very protected. And yeah, I look
Yeah.
badass out there, but I'm not gonna
but
lie.
what I like what I like about it is to me it shows. I know this is gonna sound weird, but a real person.
Yeah, absolutely.
It shows to me like you've got like obviously you're the professional and
Yeah.
and you can wear a nice blazer, right?
Yeah, there you go.
but at the same time, like you're real.
I am.
And you're relatable, and you can relate to other people. It's not
Very
just kind of
much.
like you said, that transactional, like, hey, here's a product. I
Yeah.
got you covered. Okay, see you later.
Yeah.
You're kind of like I would say the people's choice.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I am one of those people. Yeah, it's funny because I wear my heart on my sleeve too, right?
Yeah.
Is that, and when someone comes in and I do meet with new people too, is sometimes people like, they'll ask me questions because I also do like life insurance, disability, critical illness, and all those
Yeah.
good things too, right? And they're scared to say, well, you know, I might have had something happen in the past.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's incarceration or drugs or something.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm not judging. I am
Right.
never, ever,
Right.
ever. I'm probably the last person that would judge anybody who came to see me.
That's
Everybody has hard times. Everybody has, you're in arm lengths, you know, with somebody who's done something crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm friends with someone who murders anybody, but, you know, but just
Yeah, life happens.
life does happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people are think, yeah, okay, when they come into my office, they're like, oh, your life must be perfect. No, I've had bumps.
Oh, totally.
And I've had some bumps that have been totally, totally amazing that have happened in my world
Sure.
too. So, you know, like one of our bumps that had happened, my lovely daughter, Amanda, so she's my oldest daughter.
Yeah.
She got pregnant when she was 17.
Okay.
And
How long ago was this? Give or
well,
take?
she's 32 now.
Okay.
So my grandson is 14.
Wow. Nice.
And you know, it was one of those things that it is always hard.
Yeah.
But that woman now
Yeah.
has been exceptional.
Wow.
She graduated, she finished school, and then she took herself to Medicine Hat. So she used the Medicine Hat College
Yeah.
of the UFC, right?
Yeah.
And ended up while raising a baby, got her master's in social work.
Wow.
So you want to talk about a rock star? That girl, I got to be careful because I'll get a little emotional when I talk about her because I don't think I'm as tough as her because she did it. Like
Well, she's your daughter, so she's got to have your genes.
she is exceptionally tough. Like she left the house, and not gonna lie, I cried my eyes off. My husband
No doubt.
drove away in Medicine Hat, and we left her and her 6-month-old in Medicine Hat, and she, you know, very young to me, still my baby, right?
Right.
But she just did it, you know, and she flourished. And now 2 years ago, she got married to an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And they have so I have another new grandson. Oh, I know, he's 4 months old. He's cute as a button, so he's Kane. So I have a 14-year-old and a 4-month-old.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
it's just amazing, you know. So when I do meet people and they want to throw a curveball at me, I can probably say, you know what, I'm not going to dish out everything that's happened in a person's life, but you know, it can all just work out.
Yeah,
and you can have beautiful things and be proud of. And I always say, there's a lesson with everything. As bad as it is, try to grab the lesson from it.
Oh, 100%.
And I try to teach even my clients that think, you know what, if you think I'm going to judge you, I'm sorry, because I will never judge you. But you should never go out in this world thinking that everybody's going to judge you for your one thing that happened. I'm not even saying, maybe it's not even a mistake. It's just something that's happened in your world. Just zero judgment. I have zero judgment in my office.
No, and I think it also has to do with, I mean, I guess it's situational too, but just not letting it beat you up, and finding a way to just keep taking one step forward and this is the hard part, trying to stay positive, trying to have a positive mindset when you're kind of in a negative place. Because it breeds itself, I feel like.
Right.
You know, like look at your daughter, right? Like that could have happened and she could have said, oh, well, that's the end of my life, and, you know, gone into a dark hole and not really I don't want to say it like that, but like not really done anything for herself.
Yeah,
and she flourished because
Absolutely,
she took the challenge and she dealt with the cards that she got, and it was like, well, that's not going to stop me. I'm still gonna accomplish the things I want to accomplish.
And she did, and she definitely did, and
That's an important lesson, though.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my grandson, so Riker, 14, she never missed a beat with him either. Aww. You know, she put him in hockey. Yeah. Like that kid was born with skates. Yeah, so we always look forward to hockey season when it comes. Yeah. He's got his own little entourage of fans that come and follow him wherever he goes. And to be able to support him and stuff like that. But she pushed that. And we were learning hockey. We were not in the hockey. Yeah. Like, I don't know, because I'd have to ask her, okay, what does this mean? What's offside? What's that? And I still sometimes have to question that. Okay, what's offside again? You know, all these different things. And just learning.
What about for you? What was your bump in entrepreneur road?
Well, I guess the bump,
or the main one.
The main bump actually was when I was changing over from the dental world to this. Okay. It was a little rocky, and I didn't leave on really huge positive notes. Yeah. And I felt like my life was almost sucked dry a little bit from, you know, things that had happened. Sure. And so that was really my, like, I kind of hit rock bottom with that, and I felt like, oh goodness. And it just, things that had happened when I was in the dental world, just that last little bit. And it literally crushed me, and my self-esteem went like through the toilet. So meeting Judy, she was an inspiration.
Love it.
She really, and I always tell her, and I don't know if this goes like over her head, if she's heard it too many times, but I'm like, she doesn't know how much she's impacted my life. Oh. Yeah. So I had her impact my life and growth, and I had another friend who I lost quite young. But she was also my inspiration, and she says, if you do good to people, and don't be afraid to give, because the more you give, the more you get. Yeah. And that's not why I give, but I give because it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside if I can help somebody out. So I did that forthgoing with my career, and it just works, right?
It does.
When I meet somebody, it's not transactional. I want them to be comfortable when they talk to me, and be 100% transparent in what their needs are for me, that they want from me, right? And listening to their stories. I love the stories that people share in my office. It's like some of them.
You hear them all, I'm sure.
I do hear them all. And some of them are just fabulous. And I've had some clients that have come and seen me that we don't do business regularly, but I'll get like an email just out of the blue. Hey, it's been a while. I just actually got this yesterday. And this lovely, lovely family, they said, you know, it's been a while. Hope you're staying cool, and we'd love to get together for lunch and catch up. Absolutely.
Yes, please.
You know, so I think I love the relationship part of this whole thing that I'm doing. If I could take anything away from what I'm doing, yes, I do have to make money to survive. Totally. But the relationships are more valuable to me than the money.
It comes.
Yeah, right? Like it works.
That's probably the hardest part to learn in business is obviously a transaction needs to occur, like to feed yourself, to operate a business of any kind. Like a transaction has to happen. Yep. there has to be an exchange of goods and money, or services and money. Yeah. But if you're focused, I don't know, I've always said this to people in general, even when it comes to just employees, because I've been there, right? We all have. Yeah. I would say, like, if you're just focused on the money, I feel like the money will never come, because you're never going to be satisfied, because the money will never. Right. And it doesn't matter whether you're making $100 or you're making $1 million. Like the million will never satisfy you. Right. You'll always want to chase more. But if you're chasing some sort of like non-financial goal, the money will eventually catch up.
It just does.
If you're treating people, you know, with respect and dignity and transparency and good, just do the best you can to give good customer service. Like, it might take a little longer, but the reputation that you'll build will be stronger. Yeah. And that goes a long way.
It does. And honestly, like when I started doing something like this, I was worried about. So when you start in this business, you get sponsored by a company.
Okay.
And then that company, the way that I did it is that they would help you financially a little bit. So then they keep X number of your commissions, right? Because everything I do is commission based. So if I don't do any kind of business, I get nothing.
Yeah.
So I started out, and you have a certain timeline that they'll keep you on this. So you get a steady income.
Nice.
But I got to go out and meet people that I've known for a long time in business and stuff like that. Well, I was actually pat on my own back is that I didn't need that for very long.
Yep.
And I just cut them out of the picture. Not cut. I still need an MGA and a sponsor, but I was able to like, I'll just work 100% for my commissions because, again, I started those relationships way early. I've always been relation based, right? And making sure that I have a good connection with people. So I just reached out to some of them and the business owners and stuff, and then it just flowed. And I still have them today.
Okay, but see that I've been having this conversation with a lot of people, and now hearing what you said and something you said earlier, that you're not a salesperson, you're a great salesperson.
No, maybe. I guess if you look at it that way, yeah.
I actually do. Just being in the industry I'm in, I think there's a negative connotation to the word that word specifically.
Right.
Like I think being a great salesperson is paramount, but that doesn't like. I think people associate the word with more like the sleazy.
Right, yeah.
And I hate saying it this way, but like kind of like the used car salesman-y approach. And a lot of people tie themselves to that. And I'm like, look, the lady that answers the phone or the guy that answers the phone at your front desk, they're a salesperson.
Yeah,
The way they answer their phone, the tone in their voice, the way that they're able to have an interaction, that's sales. That's literally sales to me. The way that you're able to explain someone's benefits or premiums and be transparent and show that that's sales.
I never thought of it twisting it that way, but you're right. But yeah, when you do say salesman, we always gear towards that. But it is, I'm still doing it because I'm offering you a service, and the service is a sales transaction, and eventually we're gonna hopefully get done.
But I'm probably kind of chopping it up poorly, but I had a guy that worked for me at one time, older gentleman, and again, I hope I'm saying it kind of right, but he really painted it well, and he just said a great salesperson is someone who listens and helps a person come to a logical conclusion.
That nailed it. Absolutely.
And so it's like, so listen, provide, the data, the information, whatever that is, and say, okay,
here's your options.
These are the options. What makes the most sense to you? And people that's the best salesmanship you can have.
Right.
And even if you look at aggressive, I'll say the word aggressive, but like aggressive style salesmanship, it's still, for the most part, I'm not saying that there aren't bad people out there, but even that, for the most part, I think people undermine the importance of salesmanship, even if there's a certain level of, and aggressiveness isn't the right term, but it's just more, again, helping guide someone to make a logical conclusion. Because people don't know what they don't know.
That is correct.
And I learned this working in sales at a furniture store. And I remember my regional manager said to me once, Levi, people have no clue what they want when they walk in here. And I said, what do you mean? If someone comes in, like they always come in and they say, well, I'm looking for a leather couch. He's like, no, they're not. He's like, they think that's what they want. They've painted a picture in their brain of what they think they want, but they don't know until you explain it and show them their options. And again, now knowing this further down the line, helping them come to a logical conclusion. So I would literally have people that would come in and say, I want a blue couch with wood, and this is a long time ago, I'm aging myself, but,
With oak trim.
yeah, with oak trim and really, really puffy. And they'd walk out with a leather sectional.
Right.
And it always just came down to the questions. It was like, well, like, what's your lifestyle like? What, where's it going to be used? How are you, like, do you have kids? Do you have pets? What kind of pets? Are you looking for something that is going to require maintenance or less maintenance? And so until you actually ask and listen, sure, someone could say, I want a blue couch. You could be like, well, there's a blue couch.
Yeah. But without getting
That's
home,
not
it
sales.
won't. Yeah, no.
At least to me, the way that I
You're
define
right.
it, that's not sales. Sales is being like, okay, I appreciate what you're looking at. Have you considered these things before you make a final decision?
Yes, because they don't know what to ask,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I attribute it even to what you do. It's
That's
like,
interesting.
I can come and say, well, I want life insurance, or I want benefit plans, or I want travel insurance, or whatever that might be. And it's like, I don't know what I really want. I just know that I want something in that space, but it's your job to show me what makes the most sense to me and give me a few options that are going to either that work within, the realities of someone's budget.
Right, exactly.
Because that's a factor at the end of the day, no matter what, right? You have to work within the realities of someone's budget, but that's all you're doing. I shouldn't say that's all you're doing. That's what good people do.
Right, yeah. So speaking on that too, is like I'll have some people come in and say, you know what, I need a life insurance policy for $100,000.
Right.
And I'll say, okay, what is it for? I always have to ask what it's for.
Yeah.
So then it starts a conversation like, I only have $100,000 left on my house. Obviously, I'm using a bad number because this probably should be about $500,000 because that's what their house is probably they purchased, right, talking today. And then we look at it, and then they've got their wife and their littles all in there. Yeah. And I'll say, okay, so you want to be able to pay out the house so your wife can stay there, raise her kids there? Yes. And I always ask the question, say, okay, have you thought about the taxes, the utilities, or anything like that? Or do you have any other debt? And we kind of put it all together because I said, basically, if you were to cut off all income streams right now, what would this person need to survive for the next 5 years, 10 years, and so on? And then so we paint it that way, and they never leave with the amount that they came in with. Right. Because and I ask them sometimes, well, where did you get this money? Or where did you get this number from? Oh, well, this my friend has. Okay. Great for your friend. Great for your friend. Maybe they had someone walk them through. And then I get always the question, or not the question, the statement, they say, no one's ever broke it down for me. True. So it's the same thing. If someone comes in, no, I'm not just going to sell them a blue couch. True. I'm going to make sure the blue couch fits and it's the right, you know?
You know what? As someone who, like, I wasn't taught much about that growing up. My parents were not. Like they were both entrepreneurial, but they weren't like investment and kind of insurance literate. And also part of that was just being from Guatemala. Like those things just weren't a thing. Like you actually don't even. I mean, obviously that might have changed now, but back then you didn't need insurance on a vehicle either. Like you could drive if you hit somebody, exchange information, and you pay for it. Okay. Or hope that you don't get ripped off, right?
Exactly, right?
But that right, I don't know if that's changed now, but up until when I left, towards 2007, like it's not a requirement to have car insurance. You have to have it registered. Wow. You don't need car insurance. Wow. I know that's a silly example, but the point being that even something is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
And people, I think the one thing people underestimate, I don't know if you see this when you're talking to people, but I feel like the one thing they underestimate outside of just like the expense side of things of like, did you think about the taxes and all that stuff, is the mourning. Yeah. Like it's not just like you passed away by accident, and hopefully you don't, but it's not like you just passed away and your wife or your husband, whatever the situation is somehow magically going to wake up next week and be like, well, better get at it. Exactly. Time to hit the road running. Like, granted, we hope people will be able to adjust and move on. That's just life. I mean, we'll will pass at some point.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, like that could take years of recovery.
Absolutely.
You know, and especially like you say, if you have little ones,
It's
not like you're
heartbreaking.
looking to get back in the dating pool and have dual
No.
income again right out of the gate.
Right.
Like,
You need that, and that's what actually goes with that, with mourning, as I always say that, is because sometimes people are so financially stricken
yeah,
with the death of somebody,
yeah,
they can't mourn.
yeah,
They
Yeah.
can't literally mourn
Yeah.
at all. So they're going, I don't know how to pay this. And they're more or less thinking of, I can't afford the next
Right.
mortgage payment.
right,
Instead of worrying about who just passed.
yeah, yeah.
That is absolutely devastating.
Yes.
So when I see the Facebook post on GoFundMe,
Yeah.
which I've actually taken literally a month off of Facebook and in social media.
Yep.
Pretty proud of that.
I like that.
You know, just saying, just doing that, just taking a little breather. But with the GoFundMes that are on there, it breaks my heart. And yes,
sure.
I donate, but those are people that are in those situations. I can never bring somebody back. I wish I could do that kind of a service.
Yep.
But what I can do is the ease of the financial burden. We are in a financial world right
Sure.
now. The bank, they don't give two craps if somebody passes away.
Yeah.
They want their money and
Yeah.
they want it now. Credit cards, same thing.
Same thing.
They will dive in and take your firstborn if they could. Like they're really, it's
do,
aggressive,
though,
but
no.
that's what they do,
But
right?
But that is life. It's
Yeah.
not even to paint them evil. It's like you signed up.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Exactly. So to meet those people after, it is so,
Yeah.
it breaks my heart.
Yes.
I will cry right alongside a stranger,
It's
you know,
true.
because we're human.
It's true.
We're human throughout, and losing somebody is absolutely devastating.
No, I say at the very least, like obviously there's different levels of that, but I just mean like get the bare minimum. At least be able to cover your funeral expenses,
Yeah.
and make sure that person is at least somewhat sustainable for at least a year,
Yeah.
like something to help. Because again, like I know you know this, but just same thing, just from losing both parents, like,
Yes.
you know, they didn't have any coverage. And so that was a lot to deal with. And thankfully, I mean, I had my grandma who helped with most of that, to be honest.
Right.
But people don't know what that's like until it happens to them.
Yeah.
And so it's like learning that was so important. That, you know, it was unfortunate it took that for me to be able to know, oh, like,
Right.
oh crap, my parents didn't have that. Like, why? And it's something now that, you know, I believe in. Then for the same
Yeah.
reasons, it's like, hey, like anything could happen, and people
And
underestimate that, like, it will happen.
It's going
not
to
an
happen.
accident necessarily, but
Eventually, we are all going to pass.
Yes.
We just don't know when.
Yes.
And that is the other part of when I meet with people. When something happens, it doesn't matter how old you are,
no,
right? You can be hurt, killed in a car accident at a very young age,
Yeah.
right? And I never want to talk about these products in you know,
No.
like fear mongering or
No.
anything like that. But these things happen. We hear about them all day. So I think this year, there's been 3 fatalities just on motorbikes alone.
yeah,
You know, absolutely devastating that this happens. And some of them, maybe, I don't know who's at fault. We're not going to point that
No,
picture
no,
or
no,
anything.
no.
But it's absolutely sad. Somebody lost a loved one
Yeah.
out there, right?
Yeah.
So, and these aren't planned situations.
no,
Right.
and you, excuse me, Ew. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Like I even say when my mom passed, I talked to her that very morning. She was having breakfast, like she was on a little vacation in the U.S. She's on vacation. Talked to her. She's like, I'm having breakfast. I'm having an orange juice. Then we're getting onto the road, heading to XYJ place. And I was like, awesome. Well, call me when you get there. I was that same day. I was happening to take a friend up to Drayton Valley of all places.
Oh, way up there.
Yeah, and so he didn't drive, or sorry, I shouldn't say he didn't drive, but he didn't have his driver's license. So I
Okay.
had to rent the U-Haul and whatever to help him move up to Drayton Valley from, at the time we were living in Medicine Hat.
Oh.
And so it's a long day.
Yeah.
So we left, drove up. We actually we left after work. So we
my
ended up
goodness.
sleeping in the van
Oh.
because by the time we got there, I can't remember, but between stops and whatever, it was like 3 in the morning or something. We're like,
Wow.
no point in getting a hotel, like whatever.
For a couple hours.
Yeah, so we literally just rested our eyes in this truck, dropped him off, start driving. I get tired, and instead of heading back to Medicine Hat, I called my grandma, who lived here in Lethbridge, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I just crash at your place? Like, I'm just way too exhausted to keep driving. Like, I'm gonna fall asleep if I don't stop. And she's like, of course, like, come spend the night. And so I hadn't talked to my mom because she was traveling to where she was going and I was driving. So, and this is before, well, yeah, this is before smartphones anyway. So cell phones still weren't a huge thing. And then, yeah, I crashed, and all I remember was my grandma came downstairs. I was sleeping in her basement on the couch. She came downstairs. She's like, honey, you need to come upstairs. And it was same thing, like 3, 4 in the morning. And I go upstairs, and there's like 2 people sitting on the couch. You know, fast forward, it was victim services. But at the time, I had no idea who it was, right? And she's like, honey, they have something to tell you. Well, I'm like exhausted, right? Like I was driving basically for like 2 days. And so they're like, hey, like we just wanted to let you know that, you know, your mother was in a car accident and she's passed away. And I was like, weird story. I looked at them like, okay, is that it? And they're like, yeah, like, do you want to talk about it? Do you need anything from us? And I was like, I just need to go back to bed. And so I did. I literally just turned around, walked right back downstairs and went to sleep. And it just like, it was, to me, I think my mind was just like, it was a dream.
Right,
like I was like just dreaming it,
You're
even
sleepwalking.
though I was awake. And then, yeah, I got up in the morning and there was more family members that had come, because obviously it was my grandma's daughter. And and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, were there people here last night? And she's like, yeah, like, honey, like, that actually happened. And I was like, what? Like, for real? And yeah, so to not totally crazily go all throughout the story, what it ended up happening was same thing. They were driving down the highway. A U-Haul had broken down. Funny, I was driving.
Yeah, you were.
A U-Haul had broken down, and when they came to a stop, it was just a like single lane 2-way.
Yeah.
When they came to a stop, it was almost at the top of a little hill, and the U-Haul was halfway on the shoulder and about, well, a little bit more, but about a quarter of the way of its box was sticking out onto the road, like past the shoulder line. And so my mom was driving, came to that, went to like get into the other lane, but because it was right at the top of the hill,
she met somebody else.
Semi was right on the other side of that. And
oh gosh, Levi, that's so sad. And
so she passed, and like I say, I'm happy that I had the memory of like having that morning conversation with her, and you know, we got to say I love yous and whatever, and we talked lots, of no regrets. But yeah, like she was 47. It can happen.
Yeah,
like that.
It can.
And so people really undervalue, I think, like I say, going back to like the life insurance component, having it is, to me, the goal is that you hopefully never have to use it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Right?
That would
and
be
I think you said that in a BNI meeting too,
I
right?
did.
It's like, if you don't use it, it's like, you're living.
You're living. I know. Yeah, the people say, oh, it's a waste of money, but you're here.
Yes.
You're here. Your loved ones are very happy you're here.
Yes. But if you weren't, it's not to say that money fixes the fact that you passed. It doesn't. You know, you're always going to be missed, and it's going to be a tragedy one way or another. But it softens the burdens that come along with what we end up leaving behind, because we forget that we have car loans and mortgages and, like you said, credit cards and lines of credit and you name it.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, they just don't necessarily entirely disappear just because, especially if you're married.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And you know, when it comes to the kids too, because if you had a home parent, and you want to stay with your kids because they're under the age of going to school, and then all of a sudden now that parent has to go to work, and now you have daycare.
Yeah.
That might not have been your dream of raising your kids, of having someone else. And I'm not saying daycares are bad or anything, but that might not have been your objective. So when I do meet with people, those are definitely things that I talk about.
Love it.
Because it might work. I've had people too that said, you know what, no, I don't want my wife to be wealthy on my passing. Fair enough. That's what you decide. You guys can take that fight outside when you're done. Because I see the look on your wife's face.
Well, again, as someone who was really uneducated in it, I remember getting life insurance with my wife.
Okay.
And I remember, talking about the number and making a decision on that number. And I also had that feeling. I was like, well, me passing doesn't mean it's about making you somehow wealthy. And I remember having that conversation because I still didn't comprehend it.
Right.
I wasn't looking at it in the same way at the time because I was uneducated.
Right.
Like I wasn't thinking about it, even though I had a parent that had passed and all that stuff. Like to me, it was like, well, yeah, like that your funeral expense should be covered, and that's about the gist of it.
Okay.
Right.
And
so when we started talking, I was like, well, like that's kind of almost life changing, like really. But I didn't understand, like, hey, like it might take my wife 3 or 4 years to get back on her feet.
Yes.
And there's the kids and their needs. And there's going to be bills that are attached to my personal name, or even as an entrepreneur, right? Like
there's still financial obligations that have to be met, right?
What happens? And so once you actually sit down and start adding those things up, it isn't like you're buying a lottery ticket.
Right.
It really is about taking care of like the needs of somebody.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No. Because I know, like with ours, like with myself and Darcy, if something happens to me, he's very well taken care of. If something happens to him, I'm taken care of that way. Of course, neither one of us want to lose each other. Can't even talk. What's in this coffee? Just kidding.
It's not spiked, Ellie. It's not spiked.
But it just takes that, because we often talk, like my husband and I, like nobody's getting any younger, but like, what would happen? What would life look like? Right? And it would be very traumatic on either one of us.
Yeah.
But we know that the financial piece it takes that off. It just takes that away. It's like, so you can take as much time as you want. I was a little greedy on my life insurance. I made sure that, he will not have to work.
Yeah.
I won't have to work, but I would still work just because I really love what I do.
Of course.
I love what I do. He works at the mine. It's a little hard on his body. Again, he's not getting any younger either. So, but I would probably honestly still keep doing what I do because I'm passionate about it, and it fills my bucket of happiness too on that too. But
I know this is going to sound self-serving in a way, or maybe selfish. I don't know, but I've been on a weird kick lately about transforming your family's wealth journey.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm on this kick, but it just is. Maybe because I'm 43, I'm starting to think about retirement and my kids' well-being and my wife's well-being and all these things. And I'm mad. Seriously, I'm mad that at a younger age, like my parents, again, going back to like the financial literacy part, that they didn't teach me. That they really didn't teach me the steps to change your lineage. Because it's not about even you. It's about like how you can enhance like your overall family lineage. And it doesn't actually take a lot. And it's mind-boggling to me, but it angers me that I didn't learn it. Right. From just small little investments to having appropriate life insurance coverage to like just the little things and the value of compound interest and all that stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Like all these little things that I never learned.
Yes.
So to me, I feel like I'm like, shit, I missed the party. Like, I missed the boat. Why? Like, and I'm mad about it.
But you're on it now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it's funny how you think of that. So my dad was 50 when
Yeah.
I was born.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So I grew up very different,
Yeah.
but I loved how I grew up. I will not change it.
Yeah,
Sometimes people might say we were the poor ones, but my dad didn't believe in debt.
yep,
If he didn't have money in the bank to buy it, he didn't buy it. We never had insurance on any of our homes. He wasn't educated. He came here from Nebraska very, very young. His
Yeah.
mother died giving birth to him.
yep,
So when he came here with his dad and his brother. Not a very good life that he had, but that's one part that he did teach me, is to be humble and be able to, like, we're in a different world now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he had no idea, like, like, this would be, if he could see, I'm sure he sees me now, and he'd be proud of me now, but it didn't even cross him to be able to know how to even share that with me. But what he did share with me is not living above your means.
yes,
And that sometimes is where the life insurance is really needed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people don't know if A and B are together and
Sure.
they spend like, woo, if I have $100 in my account, I'm spending 100, I'm spending 100.
yeah,
Okay, but there's still only $100 in that
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
Now you're negative 100.
yep,
Right? So then that kind of snowballs. So I always say, you know, how your parents were is because they didn't need to be.
And
Right?
I actually totally
Yeah.
relate to the way
Yeah.
you were raised, because that's my understanding. Like, growing up in Guatemala,
Yeah.
it was always really funny. So, being lucky that my mom was Canadian and my dad was Guatemalan, like, I had dual citizenship. So, you know, I didn't really have any, like, sufferings in terms of migration. I was automatically a dual citizen.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I always actually say dual citizenship was the best gift my mother ever gave me.
Oh, nice.
And sometimes people laugh when I say that, but I'm like, you have no idea how valuable it is to be able to travel the world by being a Canadian, and having
Yeah.
that status.
Yes.
But anyway, where I was going with that, actually I drew a blank on it.
Of how you were raised, and you said there's a lot of
so where I was going with that was my friends would say, oh man, like ones that didn't have dual citizenship, they would say, Levi, like, what's it like to live in Canada?
Aw.
And I would say, well, do you want to know, like, the real difference? And they're like, yeah. And this is kind of when we're older, right? I'd say, like, more in our late teens to early 20s, you know, people would say, it must be so amazing. Like, what's the difference? Like, what's the main difference? And I said, the main difference is credit. And they're like, what?
Oh,
I said, forget the healthcare, forget the countries, forget everything. The main difference is you come here and you start a life around credit. And
Yeah.
here in Guatemala, you pay cash.
Yeah.
You don't have it, you don't buy it. Even a house. Why is
You
home
save,
ownership
save.
low?
Yeah.
Home ownership's low because most people can't save enough to buy a house. So they have to rent. And it's changed now, but it was
Yeah.
extremely challenging to get a mortgage. And so what was really funny growing up was that, and I was fortunate enough to live in some of, like, the quote unquote American neighborhoods. So, you know, more gated and blah, blah, blah. And that was nice, you know, again, a benefit to my parents. But what was really interesting, and again, this is years ago, but if my dad at the time wanted to buy the house that we lived in, it was about $500,000 US.
Wow.
But if we rented it,
Wow.
the rent was $600 US a month. And that included gardening services.
What?
So
Holy.
So at the time, the way that it really worked was it was the developer that owned the properties. And so they wanted, like, buying one, they wanted you not to. And
So they
so
outpriced
prices
it.
were always high and inflated.
It's
But
not
renting was cheap, right? Because
Wow.
that kept the cash flow, right? That kept the
Yeah.
money flowing. and it ensured that they were in control of these communities. So the developer was actually the owner. So think about it just like an apartment complex, but instead of an apartment complex, they were single family homes. So just
that's really interesting.
Isn't that weird? And so literally like and again, I'm not saying this was still years ago, but so at the time, what was unique about that was if you lived in the American neighborhoods, you paid a different water utility bills because they were subsidized for poor people. Oh. So you actually paid, your utility costs were actually high if you lived in those neighborhoods. So just to give you an example, like if your utility bills in one area of town were $100 a month, your utility bills in these neighborhoods were like $400 a month because it would subsidize the other neighborhoods. But essentially for like about $1,000 US a month, we had a beautiful 5-bedroom house, gardening services, that included your utilities, and that included nanny services.
Nanny services
Live-in.
too?
Yeah. So 6 days a week we had I use the term maid because that's what it was known, right? So, but, I know that there's softer ways of saying it, I guess, but I mean, she was amazing. I loved her growing up. But yeah, so 6 days a week we had someone that lived with us, like for like $1,000 US. You could have, granted, it's a lot more money now. I mean, life has changed. It's been, over 30 years, but that was the main difference was, I said, when you move here, you got to get a mortgage, and then you got to build credit. Well, you got to build credit, so you got to get a credit card.
Yeah.
And then you got to try and save up for a mortgage, or maybe you want to continue to build some credit, so you buy your first little car, and maybe you take a loan out for it, and so before you know it, like a lot of Canada's life is built on credit.
On credit.
Your credit history is what determines what you are in society in a way. And so I always said, like, even though that's a weird thing to say, like, that is the main difference.
But that is so true, because without a credit, I wouldn't have a home.
Right. So going back, kind of like to tie that back into what you were saying about life insurance and these things, it's like that is the difference. Like what you said about your dad, and it's just way tougher to live on cash here nowadays. My grandparents did the same thing, but it's way tougher to live on cash. Like everything is like, oh, you want a car? Well, very few people have $50,000 in their bank account and just say, oh, I'll buy a car cash.
Right. Yeah.
But they can afford a, whatever, $500 a month payment.
That's right.
Right?
So right.
No one's sitting there going, well, I got $500,000 in the bank to buy that house. It's like, no, they worked hard and, put at least 5% down to be able to say, okay, well, our mortgage payment's a couple $1,000s a month and we can manage that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you technically didn't buy anything yet.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you're working on buying something so that eventually when you retire, you have something you own. Right?
So it's a weird side story, but that's why it was hard for me to understand because I didn't get educated. But now that's why I say I value understanding what it means to have good life insurance coverage and that it's never too late to just start doing something with your money.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because it does compound, and even if it is in your later years, better to start than not start at all.
Yeah, putting it just into an account thinking, oh, I have this much money, it's earning you peanuts.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then, get it growing so that eventually you can.
Yeah, like I literally just had a conversation last week with a lady, and like this is actually what got me really mad.
Okay.
About late investing. And it wasn't even complicated. And I'm not saying there aren't variables here, but she's like, look, your daughter's born. You get her birth certificate. Just go open an accelerated savings account. She's like, now go put $100 in it every month. That's it. Yeah. Which again, I'm not saying that some people could do 100. Maybe some people could do more. She used the 100 as an example. But she's like, Levi, by the time she's 20 years old, with the compounding effect of that, you will have put, and I can't remember the exact number she said, but roughly around $24,000. Says you would have put $24,000 away. With the compounding effect of that, depending on,
ups and downs.
your rates of return, but she's like, let's just use like a modest number of like 5%. She's like, you'll basically have $150,000 in that account. And when she said that, I got angry. Not at her, obviously.
No, I know.
But I got angry,
Yeah.
and I was like, wait a minute. I didn't even think about that. And I said, that's transformational wealth right there. And even my wife said, what do you mean transformational wealth? Like 150,000, it's not like your kid's going to buy a house. I said, no, but think about it. Forget, and I'm not saying you can't do these other things. It was just the way my mind worked. But I said, forget RESP, forget all these different components. Just doing that alone, I said, by the time your kid is 20, it doesn't matter if she went to college, university at 18. By the time she graduates, she can pull 50 grand out of there and pay off her student loan.
Yeah.
Then she's got 50 grand. Again, I'm not saying taxes, whatever, but now she's got 50 grand to put a down payment on her house. And I said, let's just say she pays taxes at that point, whatever, and she's got 10 to 20 grand left over. I said, she puts that in a retirement fund. Let's just say an S&P 500.
Yeah.
She's now a capable working adult. She's got to go work, go do some stuff.
Yeah.
But she lets that 20 grand sit. Doesn't even have to make a payment on it. Just let that 20 grand sit till you're 65. There, you got a couple $1 million sitting there for retirement, essentially. So you don't have to rely on CPP. And I was angry about that.
I know.
Right? I was angry.
Yeah, time is more valuable than anything.
Yeah.
It's that time. Yeah.
And I don't think people understand, like, I mean, I didn't.
Yeah.
The importance of time and how compounding those small investments can be.
It's huge. Yeah. And I didn't learn any of that either. We only had, I remember my first little Nova Scotia I had the book.
Yeah.
Put my $5 in or whatever it was. Got my $5, But yeah, none of the investment components ever. And then it was just like in my later years again, it's like, oh, now you're learning about it. It's just like, man, if I would have started this then. And I think of, even my girls with, the student loans going, nobody told me. And I had an advisor.
Yep.
And it was kind of shame on him though, but with RESPs, like you used to get the grants, like they would put more money in.
Yep.
And he always say, well, why don't you start one? Why don't you start one? And at the time, we just couldn't. But he never told me about the free stuff that you get in. Mm-hmm. There was free stuff. I just had to open it.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to take the time because I couldn't afford to put anything in. So then I didn't get either one of my girls got one. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, we can make sure my grandson, which I have to get working on the next one. But now that I think about that out loud.
Well, I had the conversation with my business partner last night, and I said, don't get me wrong when I say this. I'm not saying it's obviously part of the parents, but I said, even as a grandparent, I said, that does have potentially something to pass down. I said, and I'm definitely putting that as part of my will. It's like, at least $10,000 to $20,000 if that's what you have, but whatever the number is, right? Yeah. But at least 10 to 20, you can't touch that. That goes into a retirement plan, period. Because I don't want, that is what creates I call it a snowball effect in a way.
Oh, it totally
is.
It's
like doing those things in 1 or 2 generations of your family will completely change the dynamic of where your lineage is headed.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why I say it's so. That's why it angers me, because I'm like, it would have only taken a couple of people doing a couple of things that would have transformed how your family starts to. I don't know how to word that, but just be better in the world, be better off in the world.
Yeah, be more financially secure.
Yeah.
Basically.
And that they can then now start that path more financially secure, which means they're going to be able to pass down potentially even more.
Absolutely.
And that's how generational wealth is built.
And it is, absolutely. Because that's the only way, because, like with farming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't go right now and buy land and start a farm. You'd be broke. You'd be in the hole for ever.
Yeah.
But that generation, even though theirs is with land, but they've started that whole thing. Their snowball effect is purchasing land. Yeah. And now more land, and now more land. And then, so farmers, really successful farmers have got that figured out for years. Yep. But as people aren't on farms, we don't figure, we did have the means to it, but we just didn't know that we could do it.
Yes.
and it's with those snowball effects with investing and compounding.
And even with the conversation I had, the lady was like, oh, well, you don't have to make significant changes. And my point to her was, I said, well, yeah, so what if you can only afford $20 a month?
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
You're not going to have, even talking about this scenario, right? Okay, you may not have 150 for that person to start with, but you might have 75.
Yeah.
Or
right?
whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's better than not having it at all.
Absolutely right.
And
absolutely
so
right.
anything you can do, the slightest amount
Yeah.
is going to at least make some impact. And you can't tell me that if you even put $20 a month into something, that's a couple of coffees a month.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Whatever someone's into, the most minimal change can create that transformation of wealth.
Absolutely.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's so true.
I'm super passionate about it now. So forgive my
Well,
passion.
now you're a really good education on it. Your kids are going to be set now for when they, and that's perfect. Knowledge is knowing now that you're going to even pass that on, right?
Yes.
To be able to share that with them, and then
Yeah.
it just keeps going. And now you've stepped up to that, right? But
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Right? We just didn't know.
No, and our parents didn't know.
No. No,
Ugh.
you work hard, you buy
Yeah.
you bought your things cash and
Yeah, you put the money in the bank, and when you had enough, you bought that truck.
But that is what ultimately did create some levels of wealth. With inflations and things like that. Obviously that was good. That generation did a good job of being frugal.
Absolutely, they did.
And saving and yada yada, and making the right kind of not everyone, but making the right kind of purchase investments. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I know.
Anyway, I could go on like that forever.
Okay, that's okay.
But so that's why I was saying to her, like, I now have a chip on my shoulder about it, and this is a true story. Yeah. I have to find a way to make sure that this gets into comm classes. Like, I have to.
That is so true, because
Like,
you're lacking
the
in
fact
that needs to be in there.
And I'm not calling you out for this, but
Yeah,
I'm
no,
like,
you're
the
right,
fact that
though.
you're not angry and knocking on a school board's door to be like, I demand that something happen here. None of this is taught. None of it.
I know.
They teach budgeting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but it's the people that make the classes are the people that are financially wealthy already. Because if you can talk to majority of the parents of the kids going to school, and even when I was going to school, it's like some of the stuff I feel they should have taught us back then.
Right.
But the people that are making these decisions, I don't know who they are, but the whole education system, we could go down a rabbit hole on that too, of the things that are really lacking. And that's one of the biggest things, is teaching them how to survive, period. Yeah, it's okay. It's like, oh, well, if they don't know how to read right, and their comprehension is bad,
Yep.
they don't know how to add, oh my gosh, taboo.
Right.
It's like, but can they survive in the real world?
Right.
Can they do money management?
Well, even as an experiment, I said, like, think about the things that schools do, and I get fundraising is unique, but like, whatever programs, right? They're going on a sightseeing trip or whatever the case might be. And I'm like, how hard would it honestly be to say, look, we're going to do something even if it's for high school, right? I get not starting it super early. And let's just say grade 10.
Yeah.
And one of the first activities, you got to pay $100. And that $100, they're going to do something with it. Or help the kids do something with it, or even they're going to put it into a trust of some kind together, just as that class. Everybody puts in their little, and then they show them every month, like, look, our money together just went from here to here, and here to here, just so that they can honestly like digest it, so it isn't just a mathematical equation.
Right.
And so it's like, hey. At the end of this exercise, everybody gets their money back. Even if it's just for the year, everybody gets their money back, and whatever was done, we're gonna use it to buy school supplies or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just showed them how that, even if it's a small amount,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even if that pool of money only ended up growing $20, right? Just to show that there was some
There's potential.
change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that sounds kind of weird, and maybe it's ignorant of me to think that way, but
that would show them, because they need to be hands-on with it, right?
Yeah.
Is to show them, and almost like even have like a chart or something that they say, you know what, this is what we put in, and then just do month by month.
Yeah.
And then they see the growth, and that will feed their minds, right? Totally, to be able to see something like that.
yes.
But we need to start, like they need to start teaching this. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been mentioning that for a long time. My daughter and I get in conversations about the things that they need to teach in school, you know, on this stuff. And even when it comes to credit cards, and they need to talk equally about the debt
Yes.
of going, you know what is a credit card interest? Well, it's 29.9%. If you don't pay it off at the end of the month, you know, you're paying $30 on that 100. Are you ready? $30 on that 1,000.
Yeah,
I can't remember
but
what
I
the
even-
math is. On the
Yeah.
100. On the 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like,
I've even said, fine, then teach it backwards about
Yeah.
the debt, right?
Yeah.
So credit cards are a perfect example because that is also compound interest.
yes,
Right.
on debt.
And I always said, like, here's even a fun exercise. Not that it's fun, but it's like, you know, whatever your balance is on your card, just go look at the minimum payment request.
Oh, yeah.
And on that statement, it will say, if you make this minimum payment, this is how long it will take you to pay off this balance. And, you know, even on like you said, right? Even on $100, when it says your minimum payment's like $5, it's still going to be like 12 years if you just made that payment on compound interest. How long it's going to take you to pay that stupid little balance off. And so that will show you, if that's how long it takes on that, imagine the reverse. Imagine now
Absolutely.
investing
Yes.
that $5.
Yeah.
Well, in 12 years, if that's what it would have taken to pay off this balance, how much did that end up being? Well, it ended up being X. Great, that's what you would have had in the bank now.
Yes.
So I think there's ways that they can go about it, because I get the education system's fear on, you know, potentially bringing even someone like you in, right? It's like, well, they're going to benefit potentially from this, right? Because of name recognition or whatever. And I had somebody say, well, we'll take all of our branding off of it and teach it. And I was like, okay. And I thought about it last week, and I'm like, well, why don't you just create if you really care, then create the documentation and just give it to them. Have the teacher teach it. Then there's
Exactly.
no,
Yeah, then there's
no,
nothing- yeah,
there's no
absolutely.
overlap of like, will this person,
Yeah.
you know, benefit from this? And I'm like, has anybody done it? Like, somebody's had to have done this. And if they haven't, why?
Why not? Why not? I know.
Like even if it was coming institutionally, you know, why doesn't Scotiabank or Royal Bank or TD Bank or BMO or whatever on institutional level have a, let's call it, training manual?
Yeah.
And it's totally unbranded, and it's literally given to teachers to just say, hey, spend, you know, 1 month at 15 minutes once a week to just go over this you know, financial literacy course.
Yeah, absolutely. That would go a long ways. But
And
getting into it.
Yeah.
And that's always our biggest step with anything, getting into those tight, I don't want to say tight knit in a bad way, but they only have so many hours to teach this. Like, it's just getting in there to, like, I wouldn't even know the first place to start.
It's true. But I think it's just starting.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. I think we, as an entrepreneur, right? Sometimes we're thinking about, okay, well, I want to get to here.
Right.
Well, how do you get to there? Well, you got to take 100 baby steps, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to, I think, situations like this, we just automatically say, well, we want to make sure we get to the end goal and get these people to learn this. And it's like, well, it might take 100 knocks at the door before it finally happens.
True.
We just all got to be knocking.
Exactly. Maybe we need to take this on, Levi.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we have a mission. We have a mission to complete.
We'll get this done. Oh, we'll get the next generation of kids smarter.
Well, to end on one quick thing,
Okay.
I just wanted to circle back to actually just the importance of travel insurance, just because I've had it with you.
Right.
I know you've helped lots of other people.
Yes.
Can you just kind of like quickly walk us through what some differences?
For sure. So travel insurance has different components in it, like different things that you can get. You can get an all-inclusive that has absolutely everything right down to your baggage, and all that good stuff. You can get just a basic medical one. If there's a medical emergency that happens down there, you get hit by a bus, we always use that analogy, you'd be covered. There's also cancellation insurance and interruption. So cancellation is basically you're covered for refund of your trip on anything that's non-refundable prior to going. But then the interruption is very unique. So that happens if you're gone away. So if you say you went to Guatemala, something happened, you needed to come home. That insurance would pay for you to come back here, fix what needed to be done, pay for you to go back and catch you up with your trip.
That's amazing.
So that one is really good. And then there's the to-go has, what you like on that too, is if your flight is delayed more than 2 hours, they put a little bit of chunk of change into your bank account to cover things like any kind of treats, whatever you decide to spend it on. If it's over in a certain amount of time too, they will actually pay for hotel accommodations as well. So lots of little different parts in there.
I thought it was amazing.
Yours worked out. You made money.
I mean, again, it was unfortunate that our flight got delayed. I think it was 5 hours or whatever it was. But I bought travel insurance in the past. That was the coolest, simplest, and most immediate solution I've ever seen. And like you said, it was like, bang. At 2 hours, at 4, they were like, oh,
here's some cash.
Here's some more. Basically, and it was like, what? How's this happening?
Absolutely.
And it was like, well, I guess that covered for sticking around for an extra meal, and and again, it wasn't like a lot of money, but like you said, it paid for the premium and then some, and it paid for us to have our meals and stuff covered while we were, again. Does anybody want to be delayed? No.
But
again,
it does.
Do you want to use the insurance? No.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you have to, if you need it, man, it was so convenient for it to be there. It was so convenient. So I think you should definitely sell more of that.
Yes, I should. Yes. Anyone going any places and stuff like that, I can definitely hook you up. And there's the other thing too, is that people ask if they're medically ill. There is a different, again, being independent, I can look at different options. Sometimes people, well, obviously, if you just had a heart attack next week, nobody's even going to want to go on a vacation and stuff like that. But if you've had it some time ago, there is different products that will still cover in the event, and there's just some guidelines that we follow and make sure that you're still safe to go see family or go on a vacation as well. So I do my best to make sure that I follow through with all that, answering all the questions as much as I can, and then as well, there's always nice customer support. As well. So I always like to have the feedback from my clients going, yes, something did happen. They phone the 1-800 number, because phoning me isn't going to get them anywhere. They need to, as soon as they get to us where they're safe in the hospital, you phone the travel number that's usually on the back of the card, and then it operates very well. Depending on which country you're at, then it'll go directly bill right to the hospital, so you don't even have to worry about anything. Some other provinces you might have to pay, and then it'll be a little bit different, but not normally. Anything that I've dealt with, they've connected with the hospital quite nicely, and it's worked out really well. So so people are safe to go and feel confident that hopefully they don't have to use it. And I always say that, right? It's like, well, if you went down there, you put $100 for travel insurance for, it's like, you didn't use it, perfect. Like, I will not ever go to the States without having something.
Oh, heck no. Heck no.
And I do have it built in with my husband's travel insurance too, right? Through his work, so which is nice. But that is medical only. There's always, in any of the group plans, it's medical only. It's not cancellation, interruption, or baggage, or anything like that. So when we go, I always get the to-go, so that I get the if something happens with my flight, I get that little bit of change. And
hey, you're smart. You're in the industry, so you're practicing what you preach.
I buy it, and I tell all my friends, I said, just, call me. We'll put it on your card. Let's go.
It's simple. It's easy. Go.
Exactly. So,
well, hopefully some people learned something from you today, but I appreciate you coming and
thank you so
exchanging
much.
stories and just having a good chat and learning more about each other. And yeah,
No, this is great.
I enjoyed it. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you, Levi. Always a pleasure.